My entire life, I've been told I talk too much and I'm too social. And it was a complete shift, the assessment. Rather than thinking there was something wrong with me, all of a sudden this gave me permission to actually explore what I actually bring to the table.
Welcome to Culture Talents. Each episode, I sit down with leaders who choose to work differently by unlocking the full potential of their teams and by staying fully aligned with who they are. I am Florence Hardy, founder of Le Labo des Talents and your host. Initially in French, this podcast now includes voices from across the globe, exploring how leaders grow through their natural talents and how they can help others do the same. Welcome to Culture Talent. Today, this is a special episode in English where I am really thrilled to welcome Alicia Santamaria. Hello, Alicia.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Everyone listening, please know that I am in Paris, but Alicia is now speaking from the Bay Area, so San Francisco, the other side of the world. Alicia and I, we've known each other quite a long time. We date back probably 2016, back in Omaha, Nebraska, at the big Strengths conference of the time. And let's say we met as professionals, we grew into friends, and now we sometimes collaborate together. The way I'd like to introduce you is to say that you are a seasoned coach and trainer and facilitator with a huge expertise in strengths. And you founded your own business, Adelante, 15 years ago. Actually, you are celebrating the 15th anniversary these days, if I'm correct.
Yes. January marked 15 years since I launched Adelante Coaching Consulting.
So let me start by asking you a kind of looking back question. When you look at your life and work journey, what feels most you today that was not necessarily that obvious earlier on? And please feel free to tell us a little bit about your journey too.
I started in nonprofit work, so non-for-profit, the social sector, and really from a young age knew I always wanted to help people. I didn't have a very specific calling like other people. I was always envious of other people who knew they wanted to be an accountant or a doctor. My sister went right into acting, into theater. I didn't have that clarity, but I just knew I wanted to be helping people. So that journey has taken me from Syracuse, New York, where I was born and went to university, across the country to California. And I think one of the biggest things to share in terms of my background is my work in conflict resolution.
Yeah.
So I worked at several organizations that worked in the community and provided training around how do we use words and how do we seek to understand each other to manage conflict in different ways. So not to get rid of conflict, but to manage it better.
Yeah. Just for context, share with us, European listeners, when you mention community in an American setting, this is kind of the civil society, like associations, groups of people, right?
Yeah. And for example, neighbors that have an argument over a fence, right? Rather than they get into a dispute about the fence, rather than going to what we have here in the United States, small claims court, or getting upset with each other, right? There's ways to facilitate people having dialogue and conversations about hard issues.
Tell me, so from that background and experience and meaningful work, helping people for sure, how did you morph, so to speak, into a coach?
So I took the experience I had at different places I worked. I also worked in local government and philanthropy. I took this experience I had with training and facilitating groups, and I added coaching to that tool belt, getting certified here in the United States through the International Coaches Federation and
ICF.
ICF. And I decided to go out on my own and create my own practice where I could do all those things.
And so sometime along the way, you kind of encountered the realm of strengths amongst the many tools you master. I mean, I need to say this. When did you meet strengths? What did it reveal for you?
I was walking through Barnes and Noble, which was a bookseller here in the United States that there's only a few left, unfortunately. And I saw this book, a red and white book on the shelf called Strengths Finder 2.0. This is about 12 years ago. And I pulled it down, and with my learner and input strengths, I was excited to take the assessment. And when I saw my results after taking what was called StrengthsFinder 2.0, today we call it CliftonStrengths, and communication came out as number one. This was an absolute transformational time for me.
Let's zoom in. How was it transformative?
My entire life, I've been told I talk too much and I'm too social. So, the social can get in the way of work, right? So in school, it gets in the way of the academics. In the work setting, it can, right, get in the way of getting the work done. And so when I saw communication, I have woo, which is winning others over. That's my number 3. All of this made sense, but it made sense in terms of this is something good about me.
Yes. So suddenly these descriptors or maybe criticism that you heard, or let's say constructive feedback, Alicia, please focus here, do less of that, became valuable assets.
That's right. And it was a complete shift. Rather than trying to be quiet, rather than thinking there was something wrong with me, all of a sudden this gave me permission to actually explore what I actually bring to the table and how do I use it for good, not evil. Because, right, monopolizing conversations or talking over people or some of those things that can be what we call the blind spots or the basements of our strengths. There's so much more than that.
So for good measure, I want to invite you to tell us your top 5, because that's one of the things we do in Culture Talent. And then maybe tell us a little bit about, besides communication and woo, which you've mentioned, which of your strengths has maybe matured over time in your work as a coach?
So communication, individualization, learner, and input.
Which we share, you and I. Okay,
Yes.
so of those 5, or maybe the ones below, which is the one that you, as we say in our lingo, you lead with the most and that has maybe matured or evolved the most over the years in your practice?
As much as I want to lead with my brain and my learner and my input. I love research. I love to read. I love to learn. I lead with my mouth. It is what it is. I do believe I have learned how to use my communication in ways that can support other people versus maybe silencing or being the loudest voice in the room, and some of those other practices that were I think a very immature, the raw use of communication.
Yeah, one thing that has struck me in working with you in our collaboration has been that you can really facilitate a room with 100 of people over not just an hour, not just half a day, but even 2 days or probably more, and still have energy. And I find this absolutely fascinating. And I think that's part of your talents and who you are at your best.
Thank you.
Please, everybody, know this about Alicia. This is the energy that comes through. In the work you do, you've kind of probably brought the best of who you are together, also of your experience. So I'd like to zoom back or circle back to conflict resolution. You mentioned that you worked in communities, but I believe in corporate or in business today, at work, conflict or at the minimum tensions are in everyday interactions. Not necessarily with everybody all the time, of course not. But that is a big part of what keeps people, sometimes blocked. So how do you approach this from a strengths lens?
My work for the last 15 years has been specifically in the workplace. We're all unique, different individuals. And we know that from CliftonStrengths, that it teaches us, right? Gallup says we're 1 in 35 million or something, right? In terms of our strengths profile. And of course, we are going to bump up against other people. That is absolutely normal. So number 1, normalizing conflict. Is going to happen. It's how it's handled. That direct, honest, open communication with one another is really what the key is. And when we understand where somebody's coming from a strengths perspective, it can give us new language and a new set of understanding to be able to have different kinds of conversations with each other.
I'm curious, how do you get people who may be a little reserved or not so open, unlike you, to really open up? What are your maybe tips for managers or leaders listening here and saying, yeah, I can see that, but then practically, how do I invite those conversations?
We talk a lot about psychological safety in terms of, can people speak up when they are feeling that maybe they've been stepped on. One thing I do with organizations and teams is help them create team agreements, or what we say team norms or a team charter. And so having agreements already set up that create culture that says, here on this team, we don't talk about each other, we talk with each other. So managers can support that. You're having trouble with so-and-so. Let's talk through how can you approach them directly. The other big piece of this is around needs. So there's a way of thinking about this in terms of, if we can understand what their needs are underlying their positions, then we can understand them. And all of our CliftonStrengths have certain needs.
And another side to that even is to get into the habit as human beings to express what we need, to make requests. Doesn't mean that they're going to be fulfilled necessarily all the time, but by making a clear request, we're maximizing really the chances that we find new possibilities together. If this conversation resonates with you, if you'd like to go further, I work with executives and leadership teams through executive coaching, team coaching, and workshops. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect. Now, let's dive back into the conversation with Alicia. Part of your work and part of the work we do together, indeed, is with teams that can be global, that can be distributed, or that can be diverse. What is especially key for those teams where cultures are different? I mean, national cultures maybe, or background.
Providing opportunities for people to connect and get to know each other. Different cultures have different, some cultures are very direct and some are very indirect. So having, those kinds of discussions can really help people. There's got to be some adaptation, some flexibility that you give to one another when you are working across cultures and geographies.
I hear your individualization as, tuning in to what's being expressed or said. And actually, maybe if you allow me, I will mention you are from Italian origin, Santamaria.
Yes.
And now working in San Francisco Bay Area, you work with different origin people as well.
Yes. It's very diverse here in the Bay Area. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that. How does it show up in your, work life?
I lived abroad. I grew up speaking a second language, which was actually not Italian. It was Spanish. And my last name is my husband's, who is from El Salvador. I've been sort of a multicultural person really since the beginning. And so I'm very attracted to that. I have always been somebody, and I do think it's the individualization where I can pretty much work and connect with anybody. And I'm just fascinated by, humans, for a human being for who they are. I am able to find something that I have in common that I can connect with a huge diversity of people. And actually, when I first started out, people told me to niche myself and only work with these people, work with this kind of company, work in this area. And that's been very difficult for me because I love the diversity so much.
The broadness, let's say, and the diversity. Yeah. That's a nice segue, because I wanted to talk a little bit about Adelante, and you tell us where this name comes from, what has evolved in your practice, and what feels more meaningful or more critical for you today than before.
When I decided to go out on my own, as we say, I was looking for a name that was not my own. A lot of coaches will use their own name. With a name, Alicia Santamaria is already a mouthful. I felt like I needed to come up with something else. Because I do speak Spanish, because where I live in California is that we have a lot of Spanish. Adelante means forward in Spanish. And so facilitating people, teams, and organizations forward.
To
I'm a
move
very,
forward.
that's right. I'm a very active person. I have a lot of energy, as you said. So I love that idea of the metaphor of forward motion. So that's where Adelante Coaching Consulting came up. The other just a quick little anecdote. Adelante can also be used if someone is knocking on your door. You can say, adelante, adelante, come
Like
in.
come in. Okay.
So part of my personality is hospitality. So welcoming people, there's something very important to me about hospitality. And I think that I'm able to bring that into the work that I do. So I loved it for that reason as well.
And what I love about what you're saying, and I think that can be inspiring for everyone listening, is how you, in a way, tell us how you craft your company to who you are. So rather than niching per se, you actually go broad, but then there are certain topics that you feel your strengths bring value to, and you invest or are more active in those. And also Adelante does speak to your futuristic talent, which is, okay, maybe not in your top 5, but very close under. I have the pleasure to sometimes collaborate with you. So just for people to understand, we are clearly not very close geographically, but sometimes we do collaborate on client interventions. And also we meet from time to time where we brainstorm or create programs or new frameworks together, things like that. So that's a nice example maybe of how strengths can complement each other. So what would you say about what has been easy, maybe great about working together? And can we maybe reflect? This is not prepared, by the way, where, things may get a little tight.
You have just this incredible sort of open spaciousness in thinking. I can be very linear. I can be very concrete. And your
I love that.
ability to hold space for kind of the abstract and for the big ideas and for spaciousness is a great compliment for me.
There's some anchoring within you and some, not so much let's get things done, but structuring. Also, what are good ways to communicate, tell maybe a story or put a message through so that it lands? That's what I really love about you. And where I think, Alicia, we connect greatly is the open approach to people, so includer connectedness, but also the input and learner, where we enjoy growing and learning forward, if I may. There are not so many people one can turn to when a solopreneur or a small consulting coaching firm to really, okay, what's the next thing? What are we creating forward? And you're one of those dual persons. That's really what I love about you. Part of your work is also in coaching individuals, coaching executive, coaching people, maybe sometimes in transition. And in the current world, current context, I'd like to ask all of your strengths and your experience to share with us some of your thoughts about what are questions you'd like to invite leaders in the workplace to ask themselves more often or to consider more often.
The very first thing that comes to my mind, of course, is to be more of who you are. Sometimes when I'm working with leaders, they've come to me because they're facing something and they need to fix something. And so what I love about the strengths approach and what I use in my coaching is focus on what is already in you and how do you continue to build and grow and develop that and manage your areas of weakness. So if there is something, we all have areas to grow and develop. We all have blind spots, but let's look at those blind spots from not a place of deficit, right?
Yeah. So own who you are and then take care of the rest, but not as a first thing in front of your nose. So for teams today in the part at work, part remote, part here, part there, this is a very complex work world that we live in? What would you say they need to pay attention to?
Because of my number one, communication, of course, I'm going to say keeping the lines of communication open and not making assumptions. So that is one of the really big things, is that we can't just stop when somebody says something we think we understand. Use curiosity and open-ended questions to dig in to what people mean when they say certain things, especially across cultural and different geographies. And for leaders to use curiosity and open-ended questions as a way to coach their teams, rather than be telling people what to do, being directive, is such a really important workplace skill for everybody to have.
Alicia, in our work as coaches, we are external people to organizations, and we're also not meant to be there forever. We actually support a leader, a team in a given context and moment. And sometimes our interventions are just one day, sometimes they are over a few months, maybe even a year and a half. But one of the topics you and I discuss a lot about and sometimes brainstorm together is, how do we build autonomy or capacity for people then to sustain this work together? So what is your approach to this?
Thank you. I do believe so strongly in organizations being able to kind of take over and own the work that I start with them. And I have a saying that I never want to be a one and done. You have a consultant come in and do an assessment, and everyone takes it and they love it, and then nothing.
Yes, and it is so disappointing, including for people who got great joy and energy from it. Huh?
That's right. And it's like, oh, flavor of the month. Oh, yeah, we had that one person here that did whatever. I don't want that. I want that. For me, it's a little transactional, and it doesn't leverage the investment that my clients have made. And so I have created a host of resources to help support internally. How do you build capacity internally to support the work and provide tools? So it's really those two things. It's making sure there's people that are, on the team or in the organization that can champion and carry the work forward. But there's also ongoing resources and touch points as needed over time. So I have some clients, honestly, Florence, I have been working with for 10 years. And I've been able to support them and continue supporting them, but not all the time. They're touch points.
Not as
over
a
the
fixer,
years.
but more as a,
That's right.
nurturer,
That's right.
inspiration.
Right.
Yes, we look at this topic in similar ways, and that's one of the areas where we brainstorm well together, whether we call it internal coaches, ambassadors, champions, or just, strengths nurturers or lunch and learns. That is an essential part of how we hope to make an impact in the work we do. Awesome. So I think with that, we have a great, food for thought for everyone listening. We can connect with you on LinkedIn, of course, Alicia Santamaria. Would you like to name your website as well?
Sure. It's just www.adelantecc.com.
And may I say that this website is absolutely brilliant. First, it's beautiful. And second, it has a host of resources on the many topics we've covered today and more topics that are really clean, crisp, and very useful. My input just loves your website. So I needed to say this.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and your audience. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Leadership starts with who you are. When we lead from our strengths and see and appreciate their strengths in others, we open new ways to grow, to work, and to thrive together. At Le Labo des Talents, we help leaders and teams do just that, across cultures, across borders, in the real complexity of today's world. Until next time.